Hello everybody, welcome back. Another episode of the Golden Talkies, exactly a week after the last one. What a miracle. I am...
If I upload this on time.
Depending on whether you fucking edit it on time. I'm actually, you're very punctual, I shouldn't be mean. I'm Jamie, this is my co-host Duncan. We are the best of friends. And every week we watch a film that came out 50 years ago, that week exactly. 50th anniversary films. And then we talk about them. And that's the premise of the podcast to which you are listening. How are you, Duncan?
I'm good. I'm a little bit concerned about my audio quality. I don't know why. I had because Jamie was late today, so I actually was testing my mic and I seem to be having some issues. But I'm hoping it's okay. It's probably okay.
Good.
What film are we watching today?
This week we are watching...
What film have we watched and are discussing today?
We can pretend we watched it today. We are discussing The Beguiled, based on a novel called The Painted Devil, I believe, which came out in 1966. This is a film called The Beguiled, which is starring Clint Eastwood, directed by Don Siegel, who later this very same year will make much more successful and popular film Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to get...
That's interesting. So the film's called The Painted... not the film, the book's called The Painted Devil, but I read somewhere that the book was called The Beguiled. I wonder if he released it as a Beguiled for a bit, or maybe the thing I read was just wrong.
Or maybe it was like a, different eras thing. Different areas thing. I don't know. This film wasn't very successful. It was a flop. To give people some context.
This film was also remade, and I believe you watched the remake.
Yes.
Is that right?
I did watch the remake. I feel remake might be wrong because I think it's made by Sofia Coppola, who says she only watched the Don Siegel one once and never really thought about it again. So maybe re-adaptation would be better.
Oh, okay.
Although I would argue that there's definitely elements of the original in it.
Cool, because I think I might give it a watch based on your review of it, but we'll get to that later.
Yes.
So, this film came out in Italy on the 23rd of January, March in the US, and August in the UK. So, once again, we are going by a loose definition of release date.
Yeah. It's Italians matter.
They do. Italian lives matter, this is true. So,
unless you're Super Mario, that disgusting beggar.
Exactly. So, we'll start with the historical context. Do you know, Jamie, what National Day the 23rd of January is?
Shrove Tuesday.
That's
early. Close. Oh, Martin Luther King Day.
No, it's National Pie Day, not to be confused with Pi Day, spelt P-I, which is 14th of March. This is pie spelt P-I-E, as in the eating kind.
I get you.
The one on the 14th of March, of course, is to do with the number.
I get you. Because it's 3.14. That's very clever.
Exactly. So if you're American, that would be correct. Do you know what else happened? Not this week, but actually last week. But we're going to pretend that we were going to pretend it happened this week because we didn't talk about it last week.
I don't know.
Super Bowl 5, Jamie.
Wow.
The 17th of January.
Who was playing on Super Bowl 5?
The Cowboys and the Colts.
Cool. They still in the game? Are they still good?
What?
Are they still playing? Are they still good? I know the Cowboys are.
The teams are technically still playing, but the Colts moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis, and there's now another team in Baltimore. So they're not still good particularly. I mean, they're both pretty run-of-the-mill teams at the moment. But they were in Super Bowl 5, and the Colts won it. So there you go.
Seems weird to me that you can just move a team from town to town. I don't really get the point.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. The Baltimore one's interesting because the Colts moved from Baltimore to Indianapolis, and then the Browns moved from Cleveland to Baltimore, but they renamed to the Ravens, and then a year later, the Cleveland got their team again, but it was technically a new team, so the team that was in Baltimore was the Cleveland team, but they gave the name back to the new Cleveland team. So there's a few interesting things. I didn't really explain it very well, but...
Did you know that Ribena is made by the Lucozade company?
No.
Fascinating.
That is actually quite an interesting fact. I assumed Lucozade was a bottom line thing. Like I assumed that Lucozade was like Tango or something, where its brand and it was owned by Coca-Cola or something. I didn't realize that Lucozade was the overarching company.
If I want to send a letter to the good people who made my Ribena that I'm drinking right now, I'd have to go to Lucozade Ribena Limited,
right,
in Stockley Park, Uxbridge, if anyone wants to take a trip. So, pretty fascinating.
If anyone wants to go bomb,
vastly more interesting than the Super Bowl teams.
That's not good. Yeah, it's interesting that teams can move. I guess it's not really something you see in European sports, but it's an alternative to the team collapsing, which obviously happens. So I guess it's not actually that different when you think about it. Anyway, that's enough about American football. Let's talk about the Civil War.
I'm not going to talk about historical context, or is it just the Super Bowl?
That was kind of my historical context, unless you've got anything more.
I didn't look it up, so
no,
we're good. Unless you want me to look it up right now, very noisily.
I mean, if you want to, go for it, but I don't think.
Sure, why not?
National Pie Day and the Super Bowl, which didn't even happen this week, were the main things I came up with.
Yeah. God, my eyebrows are so itchy this week. It's horrible.
This is top tier content, right?
It better
eyebrows.
be. I'm suffering, and it's about time that people understood. Okay, right. Starting on today, in 1971, Britain got permission to sell arms to South Africa. Which, mildly interesting. That I'm sure it will end well. John Lennon and the Plastic Ono Band record "Power to the People" the day before. So he's moving on. Nothing of interest happens on the Thursday. World record for the 1,000 meters by a speed skater named Ari Schenk on the Thursday.
What's that? What was the record?
1:18.8. I'm guessing 1 minute 18.8.
That's really fast.
Yeah. But I guess skating's quite fast, isn't it?
Yeah, but I never realized it was that fast. That's pretty crazy.
It says 1:8. I mean, it can't be 1 hour, so I guess it's got to be 1 minute.
Yeah, it's
John Lennon meets Yoko Ono's parents for the first time.
Right.
And
we're really scraping the barrel here.
How's that scraping the barrel? That's incredibly important. It's got a massive meeting of interest thing.
Some bloke met his girlfriend's parents. What the fuck?
Some bloke? How dare you?
Well, what are you talking about?
Some bloke named Marvin Gaye created "What's Going On" the same day about police brutality, which of course is an issue that has been completely resolved in our enlightened times. NHL All-Star Game with Bobby Hull. Helter Skelter is played at the Charles Manson trial on the 19th.
What?
Okay, you know the story of Charles Manson and Helter Skelter?
No, I can't say I do. Oh, that was my phone. Sorry, that's very unprofessional.
Okay, so the Beatles, right, released a song called Helter Skelter.
Right.
It's like a very heavy sound. It's sometimes credited as being the first heavy metal song.
Right.
But it's because it's written by Paul McCartney. It's about someone going on a slide. But Charles Manson heard it and interpreted it as a call for a race war for reasons that I haven't understood. And hence he did his stuff. The Manson murders I am of course talking about specifically. So yeah, that's that being played at the trial.
Right.
Yep. And then the 18th, which I think is the last one. Northern Ireland Prime Minister met the British Home Secretary. Other than that, nothing massively of interest. So there you go. Still a fairly quiet week.
Great.
Other than a lot of Beatles related stuff happening, which is very important, and you should appreciate the importance of.
I don't, but
you should.
Thank you anyway.
Cool. Right.
The film.
The Beguiled. As we say, starring Clint Eastwood. So...
Who else does it star, Jamie?
I don't remember.
Geraldine Page, Elizabeth Hartman, and Joanne Harris. Very nice. I didn't recognise any of their other work, but just I feel like it's appropriate to name drop them, give them a mention here.
Okay, so... Shall we discuss this? Right. As Duncan alluded to earlier, this takes place during the time of the Civil War at an all-girls school. This does not contain a great many students, I think 5. The rest, I think their parents have all taken them away, given that it's the war.
Yeah.
The action centers on Corporal John McBurney, or as everyone else likes to call him, McB.
Yep.
Something excised from the remake.
Oh, is it? That's a shame.
They don't call him McB in that one, possibly because it's silly.
I'm definitely not watching it now then.
So the opening, this is a good film opening. I think it's got a very nice sort of drum. It starts with like a drum thing and then it escalates, and then there's sepia photos in the background showing men going off to war and the battle, and actual battles, and then finishing up with corpses lying everywhere in a very succinct show of the horrors that I think works very well in setting the tone.
Then, of course, then the video goes sepia.
Yes, for a little bit.
Video, and it converts to colour when the girl comes across the body and gets some blood on her hand, if I remember correctly. Which I thought was very nicely done.
Yeah. This girl is called Amy. She is 13 years old, which, as McBee lovingly tells us, is old enough for kisses, as he forces himself upon her to distract her from screaming for Southern soldiers in a fun and very comfortable scene.
I thought she was 12.
12, soon to be 13, right? That's it.
Yeah, that's right. That's it.
Says she's going to be 13 this year.
Yeah.
So this is as good an introduction to McBurney as any, I suppose. He's taken into the school, and they initially plan to hand him over to the Southern soldiers, but they start to feel guilty because he's in a bad way.
Yeah, because we should... Do they mention where the school is exactly?
I don't think they do exactly.
I don't think they do, but it's a Southern school, so the Yankees are pushing into the land of the school, so they are all Southerners. Mm-hmm. Just to give context to why they would want to hand him over.
Yes, exactly. So McBurney proceeds on a campaign of lying to everyone around him in order to manipulate them into either allowing him to stay or helping him escape, depending on her position. So, for example, he pretends to be a Quaker, and there's he says that like he was shot because he was a pacifist, as it were, and he wasn't able to fight back. But there's a nice thing where whilst he's telling that story, we see footage of him very clearly fighting normally. And he pretends to be a fan of nature, I think, to Amy, and then we see footage as he's telling that story of him burning down the countryside. So we know he's a bit of a liar, a bit of a rotter, a bit of a predator. To move on to our next issue, which is that he starts to romance or beguile, I suppose. Seduce would probably be the better word. The teacher there at the school, one of the teachers, who is inexperienced with men. To use the taste thing, she doesn't trust them. So he starts a thing with her where he tries to win her over. There's a 17-year-old girl there. I think her name's Sophie or Carla, something like that. They changed the names in the remake, so I've gotten mixed up.
I can't remember necessarily.
Yeah, there's a 17-year-old girl there who's trying to seduce him as well.
And she is experienced with men.
She has experience,
as she lovingly says.
And she's also trying to get into the good books of Mrs. Halloway, who owns the school.
Yeah.
So I guess to give a rundown of everyone at the school, there's Mrs. Halloway, who owns it. She's, matronly, I suppose, very dedicated to the rules. Underneath was in an incestuous relationship with her brother. I don't know what you thought of that plot point. I thought it was weird and didn't contribute very much. I
think it worked well as a way to offset her image as the...
Well, I think the point of it is to show her as a hypocrite to a degree, exactly. But I don't think it actually relates to her crimes in any way. But we should get... it's quite hard to... We should talk about the film's overall message, I guess, once I'm done. Because I think that is the issue at hand. There's the teacher... what's her name? Emery or something?
Edwina.
Edwina, that's it. Who we've talked about before. She's sympathetic to him, easily tricked. Then there's Amy, who's a nice girl who likes animals and has a tortoise. She's got a pet of.
It's a turtle, isn't it?
Turtle, sorry.
For God's sake.
She likes McBee a lot. Then there's the 17-year-old who's trying to seduce him. Then there's the reason why I call her the 17-year-old is that is the most important aspect of her character from her talking about it. Then there's Doris, who is the spoil sport.
That's her name.
Carol, that's it. There's Doris, who constantly suggests that they should turn McBurney over and that they're all traitors for harbouring him there.
Yeah, because her dad's in the...
Yes, right next to Robert Lee. So yeah, I guess... And then there's Hallie, who is a slave working in the school. And McBee tries to... In a quite interesting scene, I think, McBee suggests that they should be friends because they're ostensibly on the same side. But she rebukes him, saying that he's no freer than she is, given that he's throwing his way in life. He's actually less free because she can leave if she needs to and go on the run, which I thought was quite interesting. So that's the sort of setup. And as I say, the body of the film is McBee trying to manipulate the women around him, partially for his own self-preservation, but also trying to carry on 3 separate romantic relationships at the same time.
Yeah.
Do you
think that any part of it is genuine?
What do you mean genuine?
Well, for instance, I kind of got the feeling that he would want a genuine relationship with Edwina, but because of his nature, felt unable to, and was easily seduced by the others. But I don't know.
I didn't get that at all. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't believe it.
Okay.
My interpretation of McBurney is that he's that's selfish. Entitled would probably be the best word.
Yeah.
Basically,
I mean, I would agree. I would say certainly he takes advantage of all of them, but I kind of got the impression that there was some aspect of genuineness there, because there wasn't really much to gain necessarily out of that one. I don't know.
Well, I think he just wanted to fuck her. That was it. That's all that went into his thought process, I think. To talk about the film properly, because I think it's important to talk about the ending before we can talk about it as a whole. Right. So McBee gets himself into a position where he's got Edwina, eating out of his hand, and the mistress of the lodge, but he's caught having sex with Carla Sophie, 17-year-old, and Edwina's incredibly shocked because they've just gone through an entire thing where he's promised to remain true to her no matter what, and ends up sort of pushing him, and he falls down the stairs, which, with his current injuries exacerbated, breaks his leg, which is going to go gangrenous. So they're faced with no...
Allegedly.
I think. Well, we should talk about this as well, but they say, I suppose, although I would very much be inclined to believe them, that it's going to go gangrenous, and they amputate the leg, and it's at this point that McBurney the mask drops when he wakes up, and he reveals himself for the monster he is. He gets incredibly angry with them, and he feels that they've only cut off his leg as revenge for the fact that he won't sleep with them, that they're just petty, jealous bitches. He calls all of them bitches several times, and he starts to genuinely frighten all the girls around the house with his violent outbursts. He threatens. He begins threatening them all. Once he gets to the wine, he says that he's going to rape all of them, especially Hallie, who he also reveals himself to be a massive racist. Well, massive racist. Doesn't reveal himself, but he sexualizes her in a racial sense while threatening to rape her, which is a horrible look. So everyone's very frightened of him. He storms in, drunk, on one leg. Fred says that they all might as well have castrated him. Amy tries to distract him by saying that they should look after the turtle, but he violently throws it across the room, killing it. And Amy says that she hates him now. And, they all violently rebuke him and he sort of salts away. So the girls hatch a plan, which is that they're going to poison him. Edwina he's able to win Edwina back, or Edwina sort of offers herself anyway to him. And they say that they're going to go get married and walk away. But it's too late. They've poisoned his tea, and McBurney dies. And that's my speedy enough summary of the plot.
Interesting.
And they bury him. Yeah,
that's very interesting.
Yes. So, I was going to talk about, because I think this is the main angle of discussion for the film, I read a lot of essays about it, and some of them seem to suggest that in this film you are supposed to side with McBurney and be scared of these women.
Yeah,
and
I think you are.
do not. I am not sympathetic to that take at all. Or not sympathetic. I don't understand it. And now that
I
you
think,
say
I mean,
that
I think
you
that's
agree
the
with
intention
it,
of the film. That's
Do you?
The director said himself that was.
Well, that's the thing. The director himself said that. So I'm very curious.
Yeah,
I don't get that from the film
I
at all.
would agree. I don't think I would necessarily side with him, but I do think he. I think there's a lot of sexual repression, obviously, in the school.
Mm-hmm.
And his presence kind of exacerbates that, I think, which leads this. I don't know. I feel like his nature kind of leads him to do what he does, but I don't think he necessarily intends to do what he does, if that makes sense.
Well, I feel that McBurney is very consistently throughout the film portrayed as a hypocrite, at the very, very least.
Well, yeah, but I don't think it's. I think that's through the situation that he's found himself in.
Mate, but like, I mean, the thing is, I do realise that maybe you're just supposed to automatically side with maybe because it's the 70s and you're a presumed male viewer.
Yeah.
But he's an asshole. And doesn't really do anything good.
Well,
he
is.
I
definitely don't. I definitely wouldn't side with him, or say he's right at all. But I'm not sure I agree with your interpretation that he deliberately and consistently manipulates everyone.
Oh, definitely. I don't think anything else is possible. Well, like in his first interaction with Hallie, like he mentions that if Hallie gets him free, he'll be able to find Ben, and like although that's not revealed as a lie, we all surely know that is clearly not. He's not going to have that ability. And he keeps promising unreasonable things to everyone. He pretends to be in love with Edwina, despite the fact that they've only been there for about a day, which again I interpret as a lie.
Right. But what does he have to gain from that?
Sex, man. He's horny. He says that after he's got his leg cut off, that he, as someone who is sacrificed, is entitled to have sex with everyone there. That's just text. It's not subtext.
Is that not though because he's high on stuff and he's had his leg cut off and he's going crazy?
Well, even if he is high and going crazy, that's still presented as true feelings.
Yeah.
And like as we say, he clearly has no intention of being loyal to Edwina at all.
I think he does. But he is unable to control himself.
I don't think it's presented as that at all. I mean, even before that scene, he's doing a very calculated seduction of Mrs. Holloway, which I don't think you can say is true.
Well, I think that is there's a clear motive behind that. I think, which I do think is, yeah, I kind of get what you mean, but I don't think every single instance is. I think he would like to be loyal to Edwina, but
I don't get that.
He's unable to be.
Well, I think Edwina is constantly presented as being an idiot. In the film,
definitely.
I really do think he's just taking advantage of her. Even afterwards, like as soon as he wakes up, he calls her the virgin bitch. It's not like he particularly feels well about her.
But that's because I think that's because he. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I do think he has had his leg cut off.
Well, yeah, but that's not. But he's not. They did it out of mercy for him, as it were. It's
But they
what
didn't
they had
though.
to do.
They did not though. There was
They
no
did.
need to cut his leg off.
They mentioned they have a very long argument about it and say very clearly that it's going to become gangrenous if they don't cut it off.
The Martha decides that.
Yeah, but they all agree. I'm willing to
because
trust them.
because
Yeah,
they trust
no,
her.
because but Hallie says afterwards when McBee's complaining, like she says, no, you really were going to be, injured. That's not. I don't think McBee has any real moments of moral high ground in this.
You don't think
But-
he has? You don't think he has a leg to stand on?
Wacko. Go wacko.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think he's consistently portrayed as, at the very, very least, a coward and a hypocrite and a manipulator. I would say as a genuine monster, particularly towards the end.
But do you know what about the remorse he feels for killing the turtle?
I think he genuinely does feel bad about. Well, he doesn't feel bad about killing the turtle. He doesn't like that Amy doesn't like him anymore.
Yeah, he likes Amy, right?
Yeah, I think he genuinely does like Amy and wants her to like him.
Okay, good. Right. We agree on that. So
But
I guess the point is whether that extends to him liking Edwina, where you think it doesn't
No.
and I think it does.
I don't
Potentially.
think in any scene where he doesn't want something from Edwina, I don't think he's ever portrayed as liking her, as having.
Maybe
any
he doesn't like
admiration
her,
or
but
liking for her.
I think he can see. Yeah, maybe genuinely
I think
liking
towards
her is not
the
what it is,
end,
but I think
he realizes.
he can see a future there.
I think towards
And
the end,
it's
when
not
Edwina's
necessarily that he loves her and feels a genuine connection to her, but there's something there. I think that he can see and want.
I think towards the end, he realizes that marrying her is really his only way out.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying.
But I don't think before the leg cutting off, anything he's trying to do with her is genuine. I think he is still just trying to play her. But yeah, I think sort of McBee's actions, some of them in the first half can be explained as him directly trying to manipulate his way out, particularly his interactions with Hallie in the first half. But I think a lot of them are just that he's got a very toxic view of women, not to use current day language as it were. But yeah, it's about. I think a lot of the defining trait of McBee, I would say, is his entitlement. Or entitlement entitlement's the correct term, I think. Or his belief that that these women should be submissive to him, even if he wouldn't articulate it like that. He doesn't like when they act outwith of his plans. There's a deeper anger in play. But yeah, I suppose you could say that maybe he's been wronged by his country and unhealthfully is taking that out on us people who he sees as a subclass.
Yeah. Okay.
That's my interpretation of the film. I mean, as we see with the scenes of Hallie, McBee doesn't actually believe in any of the Union's ideals. Theo's not really a moral crusader. But yeah,
No, I guess it's true.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, in the context of this, the reason why the incest plot kind of bothers me is that I think it's supposed to portray Mrs. Holloway as a hypocrite, as we said earlier.
Yeah.
But I just don't see. I don't think having a immoral in a wider sense, but ultimately consenting relationship really ties back to Holloway's crimes. I suppose if you do see it as not being able to resist temptation, then maybe that's different.
Yeah.
But I suppose I don't see Holloway's stuff as resisting temptation because he engineers the situations himself, mostly. And like with there's a scene which I hadn't mentioned where the 17-year-old after seeing Holloway and Edwina together tries to get him caught by the Southerners. He hangs up the rag and like he knows it was her and he still takes advantage of her anyway.
Does he know it was her?
Yeah, he mentions. I remember
Alright.
specifically, and she says, "You shouldn't make me jealous then."
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
So yeah, I suppose I don't think he genuinely likes her at all.
He doesn't. But I think
horny,
I think she seduces him, and he, for whatever reason, is unable to control himself.
I think that's victim blaming. But no, I don't think that's it at all. I think because he makes the
Well,
the
no, I'm not
choice.
blaming her for that. Clearly, she is like a very troubled character, but I'm also not blaming him.
I think he carries a lot.
Or I am blaming him. I am blaming him. I'm saying it, but I'm saying it's not necessarily a conscious decision. It's a character flaw that he has. In the context of the film.
Yes,
world.
I get what you're saying.
In the context of the film world of the 1970s, it is a character flaw.
That McBee's speech after getting his leg cut off, where he says he should be able to have sex with any woman who wants him, this is like not his outrage speech where he says that he could rape up them all. The one where he lays out his new rules now that he's going to be running the place. I think shows that he thinks that he deserves, as it were, to have sex with any of them. I don't think.
Well, I think he sees himself as higher than them, and I think the fact that he's had his leg cut off, he's kind of done, and he's like, okay, this is, I don't know, he's kind of done playing along, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose to play devil's advocate, you could say that if you're supposed to side with McBee against the woman, then this is the point where like he's just telling them what's what and what they should do. Just if they all want to sleep with him, they all should. Why do they have to be so bitchy about it?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. I genuinely think he like is losing his mind.
Yeah,
because of the just like the whole situation.
I mean, I think as a modern viewer, it's hard to watch the film and side with McBee. I don't think the film's dangerous in that way.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I think it's not necessarily easy to side with him personally, but I certainly saw that you were supposed to side with him, and I picked up on the reasons to side with him and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I do appreciate that. Clearly, I mean, it's really annoying because the author. It's hard to find much about the author of the original book. But I think certainly the director wants you to side with him, at least from interviews and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the text, not the director's necessarily version of the text, but I think the text is on the women's side. That's my opinion anyway. I find because it's so consistent in showing that McBee is both hypocritical and manipulative, and that they were all better off before he came, as it were.
Well, I think that is true, definitely.
It sort of disrupts the peace.
Yeah, he does. But then I guess there's a counter argument that they kind of needed that, maybe.
But well, I mean, I realise it's just partly how film structure works. But yeah. So yeah. Before we talk about more story stuff, because I want to sort out my thoughts in my head. What did you think of it visually? Because I thought
it was really good.
I thought it was good. I thought occasionally it overdid it, if you know what I mean. Like there's a lot of sudden zooms that feel both old-fashioned and kind of over the top.
I didn't really notice those, but that's just a 70s thing, to be honest.
Yeah, I know it is. But just as a modern
the cinematographer that did this did a lot of westerns, like a lot of Eastwood's westerns. So there's a influence there. The amputation scene I thought was
excruciating?
It's really good. No, wait, fuck. Okay, I was going to say a big word to say that it's really nice. It's really nicely shot.
I thought it was really good at first, and then it goes back to those zooms, and then I thought, okay, this is getting silly now.
I didn't even notice that. I
think it is
I really loved the design and cinematography of the amputation scene was really good for me. It was a stronger scene. The film was a lot stronger in the second half, just generally, I think.
Yeah.
I do think the cinematography was part of that. or maybe it was just
Well,
that I noticed it after that scene more.
To advance my theory, which might well be wrong, I think the first half suffers from this difference of vision between the director's intention and the text.
Right.
That is, the film feels a little I'd say unfocused, and that it's not 100% sure what it's going for.
Yeah.
But once we get to the back half and sort of the conflict erupts, I think it works better.
It becomes Shakespearean.
Shakespearean's a bit much, and also Shakespeare would not write about women. But you know,
Wait, he would not write about women. What do you mean?
not positively.
Right. I thought we just said this one wasn't positive though. Or do you think
You said that. I think it is still.
Oh, okay.
Even if I don't think even if the director didn't intend it.
You think this
which
you think this is an unintentional feminist masterpiece? Is what you're saying?
Let's not say masterpiece. I would say unintentional, flawed feminist film.
Okay.
Unintentional feminist film. That's what I think it is.
Interesting. I think it has elements of that, but I did not pick up on that as the film particularly.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's interesting.
To me, the idea, the film is sort of about this sort of isolated female space, as it were, which is invaded by a malevolent male intruder and is thus despoiled through his actions and entitlement.
I agree with that, but I'm also not sure if it was spoiled necessarily, because I mean, like, was it spoiled by I mean, like, the woman had sex with her brother, you know?
Well, I just don't care.
So it's
that
not
much
exactly
about
like
that.
it's not like it was a
Yeah.
perfect haven
Anyway.
before, and there's, I mean, yeah.
So this is getting us very, very neatly on to the remake, which I will talk about in a bit. But do you have anything particular urgency you want to talk about the original film?
Probably, maybe. Okay, so we've talked about the themes and stuff and tried to pin them down. Did you feel? Because I certainly felt that at many points it was way too overt at trying to show what they were trying to say.
Well, maybe, but we're disagreeing with it now. So who's to say?
Yeah, but as in, so like the one thing I read was complaining about the dream sequence, for example, and how
That is stupid.
you know. So, and I think there's a lot of points like that where it's pretty clear on a subtext level what is going on, and maybe themes is the wrong word, but what is going on, and what's going to happen and stuff. It's very clear on a subtext level, and then it suddenly comes up on a textual level very overtly. At a few
I
points.
think there are moments where I like that. I think a lot of McBurney's dialogue in the second half is like doing that, but I think in a way that's important and well deserved. But I do think that like the treatment of female sexuality in the film is quite amateurish. Not amateurish. It's just it strikes the wrong tone, and I think comes from a place of lack of experience. I suppose I've also forgotten to mention, although we were obviously starting about it, but the film's quite it's quite misogynistic as well in its portrayal of women being catty to each other, which is sort of the point of the film. I suppose if we go with the director's interpretation and possibly the real interpretation of the film, it's about how scary that is if you're just a poor innocent man who just wants to fulfill his innocent biological urges.
Yeah. I mean, there is also an element, I think, where you do have to. I guess my thing is I'm coming round to what you're saying about his character, but I also think there is an element, regardless of whether he's manipulative or anything, where he's kind of been forced into this situation, and you do have to feel a bit of sympathy for.
Well, that's
how
true.
he's
I
ended up.
suppose.
I guess I don't know. It's kind of. It's hard to say, you know, sympathetic to him with everything you're saying about the stuff, but it is a pretty crazy situation, regardless of. I mean, even if he hadn't actually cheated on Edwina, he would still have 3 women like going after him that are sexually repressed, and you know, he's just, I don't know.
But he makes it much worse for himself. He eggs them all on.
Well, he does, which is not great. But I do think it's if you just look at the basic setting of the film, I think you can see the kind of message that is trying to be put across.
I don't know.
The other thing I was going to say when I was talking about the overt imagery is obviously there's this idea of like castration, right?
Yes.
It's like a big film fury thing that women always want to castrate men or whatever, and that's obviously a big theme of this film.
Yeah.
And I think it's done quite well with the amputation stuff. But then when he wakes up, he says, you might as well castrate me. So he I guess that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where whether or not you agree with the theory of castration in film, or whether or not you think the women are in the right or he's in the right, there is actually a subtextual element of the sort of imagery of the leg being cut off representing taking away his manhood and his ability to do this and all this kind of feminist stuff. But then he just blurts it out, and it kind of takes away from that, I guess.
Well, I thought my take on that scene was that, and I think this comes from the fact that I'm willing to believe them about the leg amputation being innocent.
Yeah.
Is that it's not so much that they're taking away his manhood, but much more important is that he perceives it as them taking away his manhood. And that sort of like showing his sort of fragility, I suppose, and brittleness.
Yeah. I think that is the idea of castration.
Exactly.
I don't know. It's something that I've not studied for a while or looked into for a while, so I'm kind of trying to think about it and remember what exactly the theories are. But I do think it is, whether I think no matter how you read it, that unless like you believe it was going to go gangrenous, which obviously it wasn't, but I think however you read
it clearly was. It looks very fucked up.
Nah, mate.
She looks in a medical textbook. They have a discussion with 3 separate women who all agree.
Yeah, all the women want to castrate him, Jamie.
Maybe that's possible, but I don't agree. Anyway, I'll talk about the remake now. I think.
Yeah, I think
this is a good opportunity.
Well, I can always. Pipe
we look back. I think the remake's changes are interesting. So this film was. I keep calling it the remake, as I said earlier. It's more a re-adaptation. But the book was adapted again in 2017 by Sofia Coppola, who is a female director, which is interesting in the context of this film. So the remake is, I would say, a better film. It's a bit shorter, which I think helps it go along at a snappier pace. The cinematography is of a more modern style, which just as someone like that does appeal to me more. I hate to say, it's got a much more washed out color palette, which I don't particularly like. But that's sort of what I'm talking about visually. You don't call it a color palette in live action cinematography. That sounds stupid. Well, the colors aren't vibrant. But yeah, changes. Interesting changes. One, you are much more clearly supposed to side with the woman in Sofia Coppola's version. I think the issue with the Don Siegel version is that McBurney is still the protagonist ostensibly, and the story works a lot better when he isn't. And when he's sort of seen as something kind of strange.
If you just look at the posters, I mean, you can see that, I think, pretty clearly.
Yeah. But Colin Farrell is McBurney in the remake. Who's
really?
A different kind of handsome, although he does pull it off here.
I got Colin Farrell confused with Colin Firth.
No.
Which I thought it would be
Colin
like
Farrell's the
Paddington.
Irish one.
Yeah, no, I see that now. I just looked him up. I thought you meant Colin Firth, and I was like, well, that's an interesting casting decision. I'm not sure about that.
But yeah, I think something felt off to me, as I said, about Don Siegel's version that changed in the 2 hours. And I think the thing it was for me is that the film takes Eastwood's POV in the first half, and then shifts to, I think, the women's in the second, I would say. And I think the story is really better told with more sympathy to them. I think that's the disconnect that I felt, which Sophia's resolves. Sophia's is much less. I should say Coppola, I suppose. Sorry, Coppola's is much less connected to the Civil War, to its detriment, I think. And there's not really a lot of emphasis on it. The slave Hallie isn't there, and there's no real mention of slaves other than a quick throwaway line at the beginning. So we don't get as much of a sense of place, and I don't think we really get as much of a interrogation of McBee's ideology, which I genuinely think the film is worse for having. For not having, sorry. I think in interviews she said she didn't want it to be surface level. She was going to introduce such a heavy theme, which I am sympathetic to. I do think the film is worse off for not including it. I don't want to like put words in people's mouths, but I thought the commentary in the original was fine. Not fine. Was interesting and could have been improved upon in interesting ways without taking up too much of the focus. What else to say? So Sophia is much in the Coppola version. It's much less obvious that McBee is lying the entire time. They don't actually reveal these things. It's really more up to the viewer to understand what's going on, which I think works quite well actually. But the same scenes happen. There's not as much. The weird cattiness is gone, which I think works very well.
The weird cat.
Cattiness.
Right.
And there's not the incest subplot is also dropped again, much to the film's benefit. But she doesn't show the amputation, which I thought was a shame. But I think is part of you not being meant to sympathise with McBee as much. It's sort of a change there. Yeah, what was I going to say? The rage happens as again. Farrell's throw is a lot wimpier, which I thought. I didn't think Farrell's outrage I think is very good, and it doesn't come across quite as obviously cruel as McBee. Again, I think Coppola's film is a lot subtler, even though it's still very identifiable where it's coming from. The you might as well have castrated me line is still in there.
Right, that's a shame.
But he does still threaten them all with a pistol, and they do still poison him. The Edwina romance is handled, I think, a lot better as well. I think a good offshoot of Farrell's McBee being less obviously terrible is that Edwina's continued attraction to him makes more sense. It feels really weird in the original film, that she's still willing to marry him after the stuff he said to her.
Do you think so? I don't think so. I think it's more a case of her being so inexperienced and so convinced that she's found someone finally, because she just doesn't know what she's doing at all.
Well, yeah, but she mentions that she's terrified of the idea that men will cheat on her, and then she literally sees her worst nightmare come true.
Yeah, but then I think she's weak. Not in terms of. I guess weak's probably the wrong word, but she's yeah, she is weak, I guess. She's unable to.
All right, Don Siegel.
Is that bad? Is that the wrong word to use?
Well, are you trying to say indecisive or insecure? Or,
insecure. That is exactly the word I'm looking for. I think she's insecure, and she's willing to let it go because she genuinely believes that, like, it was a mistake.
Yeah, maybe. But I think that's the word. Insecure, that angle's a lot more believable in the Coppola version. I think.
Okay.
Doesn't seem quite as strange to me. But yeah, I think the Coppola version is much. Because it's a lot more willing to regard Farrell as kind of alien, I think it works a lot better. I think that is the secret ingredient the film needed. But I think that it's because it lacks the same sense of place, and I think because it's a little. The thing is, it's a little less obvious how monstrous McBee is, really. So it's sort of strange. I feel like the Coppola film's definitely better, and I think is more perfect, but I feel like the Siegel film aims higher, paradoxically, even if the director wasn't really on board. there's more potential in the Siegel film. I think it opens itself up to some other more interesting interpretations. Whereas I think the Coppola version sort of closes itself off from some of the more interesting avenues to be a more focused story, a more focused story that's told much better.
Yeah.
So that's my interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the question is,
Mm.
do you first of all, do you believe that Sofia Coppola only saw Siegel's version once?
No.
And
I'm sorry. I mean this very nicely.
Yeah.
Maybe she did, but I can't, because there's so many scenes that look really similar.
Yeah. So my next question was going to be, do you think she would have benefited from actually remaking it?
Remaking it proper or more
properly,
accurately?
if that makes sense. Although you're saying that she clearly did see it more than once, so.
Well, I don't. I mean, maybe it's just subconscious, or maybe there's only.
There could be other people as well. Obviously,
Yeah.
I mean, she's a director, sure, but it easily could be that everyone else that worked in it had seen the original one, so it's going to resemble it a lot. But I guess So my question was going to be: do you think she would have benefited from actually really trying to improve on the first one? But it sounds
Well, I think
like
she really. I think she.
It sounds like
does,
she does. Actually.
Does the most important thing, which is that she changes the story's sympathies, and as a result, it suddenly works much better as a story. But like I say, I think she loses a lot of excess fat, which in some ways is good, and I think in some ways works to the film's detriment. I think the sort of like middle section of the film where at least talking about my own viewing experiences, I was sort of like I felt very convinced that McBurney was sort of was manipulating everyone, and then you sort of watch him go about his business and sort of gain an appreciation of quite how horrible he was. I thought the film misses. It's really more, I wouldn't say a twist, but it's more of a sort of reveal when you see that McBurney has gone to sleep with the 17-year-old.
Right.
And then, after the leg cutting, it becomes much more obvious what he is. But I suppose that's missing, which, I mean, again, that's part of the sympathies changing, but I felt that was one of the more interesting parts of the film. But I think what really hurts it is that it does lack the same sense of place that the Siegel version has.
Yeah.
And it's much less concerned with the Civil War. It's very isolated, I suppose, which I think does work to the film's detriment. But like I say, definitely the better version of the two. If you're only going to watch one, you might as well.
Okay. So here's a thought that I've just remembered. So with the Civil War in the background, there's 2 points really in the 1971 version where it really comes to the fray. So the first one is when the captain and the 2 men come to the place to allegedly guard it, but obviously to rape the people. Do you think that McBee's would protect them and would side with them in that case? Because I guess that was one of the things for me that maybe moved me more to being sympathetic to him, because it does seem that whilst he is taking advantage of them, he is still better than these people who just want to blindly rape them.
Well, that's true, but I don't think. I mean, it's not like McBee in that situation runs and hides.
But that's because he's told to. I mean,
he's told to.
He wants to have the pistol, and he wants to be ready to.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, he takes the pistol, which is their means of protecting themselves for himself, leaving them completely vulnerable. I think the purpose of the scene is to show just how isolated and vulnerable they are.
Yeah.
But I hadn't realized too much at the time. But yeah, like, their only source of power against these people is the pistol, and McBee takes it for himself. Against their explicit orders.
I don't think the pistol is really be, well. I don't know. I don't think it'd be much protection.
It probably wouldn't in reality, but it's what they have.
It's symbolic.
Well, it's not even. I think it's not loaded with quite as much symbolic meaning as it could have had, I suppose. But particularly given that it does change hands quite a few times in the film, it probably would be better if it had.
So then
But yeah, I think that scene doesn't reflect on him well at all.
Okay, interesting. I thought it did. So then the other one is that he says at the end, when the Union troops are approaching, he says that he will make sure that they don't do anything to the school. Do you believe that?
I do, genuinely. Partly because he feels guilty and wants to make amends.
Do you think he changes at the end? I think he does. I think he. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think the reason that I was sympathetic to him is I do think he genuinely changes towards the end.
I think towards the end he's genuinely remorseful. But I think one of the other things I was going to say is that the Coppola version is much more explicit about the fact that McBee is desperate to have them all like him still, even after being a monster. Like that, he explicitly wants their approval still. That's what he's seeking, specifically. I think it's sort of the same thing. I think he does genuinely feel bad, and he does genuinely want them protected, but not necessarily because he's a good person, but because he knows that he's wronged them.
Yeah, I do think it's because I think when he kills the turtle, he kind of realizes. I guess I guess the differences in our interpretation is I think that he comes in to the situation and maybe he's a bit sleazy, a little bit manipulative, but then he gradually gets worse because of the situation he's in, and I think it then completely blows up, and when he kills the turtle he realizes what he's become, and at that point I do think his character flips and he realizes that he's got worse. I'm not necessarily saying that he's good to start with, and
no.
I think the way you're meant to interpret it is that he is good to start with, and then he gets manipulated
but the very
by
first
the
thing
woman,
the very first thing he does is kiss a 12-year-old.
But that's too so they don't get caught though.
And then
I think that
his first conversation he pretends to be a Quaker, whilst we're very explicitly told that he wasn't.
But I think that's because I'm saying I that's what I'm saying. I think he goes in manipulative, right? So he's a character with a few flaws, right? And then I think the flaws get just worse and worse and worse because of the exact things that happen to him and the things that he does. Then make that situation even worse, and it's only when he kills the turtle and he sees Amy, who he genuinely likes, and yeah, obviously it's weird that he kisses her, but I think that it establishes his character as a little bit sleazy, but I think the main thing is that he is genuinely, it is the best way to distract from the guards that are coming towards him. And then I think it's when he sees Amy and he sees that he's upset her that he then switches his character. But obviously then it's too late because he gets poisoned and he dies. And it's like yeah.
Okay.
I've put it together in my head now how I interpreted the film.
Okay.
And why I feel sympathetic to him I do think he's a bad person, but I think he's a bad person that because of the situation he's in and because of what other people do to him, and then because of what he does, and then what other people do as a result of that, etc., it just all builds up, I think. Okay, so I think he's a bad person. He gets a lot worse, and then he gets somewhat redeemed towards the end, but it's too late, and he dies. And that's a pretty epic tragedy storyline.
Mm-hmm. I suppose I wouldn't say he gets redeemed simply because I don't think he really appreciates that the way he thought about things was wrong. He just realizes he did bad things. Do you know what I mean?
I would. I'm not sure if I interpreted it that way, but I think there's an element of that where he doesn't necessarily change as a person, but he maybe realizes who he is as a person. Maybe that's the way to put it.
Anyway, I think we'll agree to disagree. I think we've both had time to air our opinions.
Well, I'm glad I
figured it out
that at the end.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to work out, I was like, why did I like this film, and why did I side with him, based on everything you were saying, and then it just hit me that it's because of the character arc that I personally see.
Okay. Well then, shall we move on to final ratings?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I would say I'd give it a watch if it's on for now, but that's bearing in mind that the remake exists, which I think is the better version of the film to seek out, which I would say was an active watch.
Right.
Yeah.
I am going to say
I think you should actively try to experience one version of the story because it's quite interesting. Sorry,
okay.
I was interrupting. Yeah.
My rating is by.
Ah,
Um,
very interesting.
I think it's a very good story.
Mhm.
Regardless of, I do think you should be aware of the historical context, not as in what song was number one, but as in when it was made
Yeah.
and what they're trying to get across. I think if as long as you're aware of that, I think actually the story is very good, especially the second half. The cinematography and the twists and turns and stuff in the second half are very good. I'm not. It's not a high buy because I do think it has a lot of issues. Like it there's a lot of stuff that could be subtextual that becomes textual, and there's definitely elements of misogyny and stuff. But I still would rate it by.
Yeah. I feel personally that both the Siegel and the Coppola versions are imperfect. But like I think genuinely the story itself is interesting enough that you should try to experience it in some form.
I think it's it's an interesting to see how different people have interpreted it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think
you and I interpreted it completely differently. If you read the Wikipedia page, like Clint Eastwood has one idea, the director has another. There's critics that say one thing, critics that say another thing. Obviously, Coppola had another idea with it, and there's the author of the book. What was he thinking? And I think how you respond to certain things that happen is interesting as well.
Yeah. Well then, shall we wrap it up?
I think so. I don't think I've got anything to say about what I've been doing or.
Neither do I really.
I don't know about you.
Yeah. So see you next time, Chicos. We're gonna watch. I think it's called The Statue. So look forward to that.
Oh well. Right. Bye everyone.